Right.
Yep.
So Marjukka,
Yeah.
tell me about yourself. Introduce the audience to who you are, what you do, and we'll dive into some API specs.
Yeah. So my name is Marjukka Niinioja, and physically I'm in Finland. Um, right now in middle of Finland, usually in Helsinki, and I am an API consultant and trainer, and I've written or co-authored a book called API Economy 101. And usually I'm around API days somewhere, organizing the API days Helsinki local.
Nice. So I mean, uh, why API specifications? I mean, OpenAPI I know is kind of the tip of that, but you
Yeah,
know we've made the conscious effort here to kind of widen the umbrella. So why do API specifications matter? Why are we here talking?
that is an excellent question because one could of course say that hey, it's do your APIs in whatever way you see fit, but um, I ended up fighting with a lot of API management tools and a lot of code generators and a lot of teams from a lot of different organizations about how to actually create APIs that you could actually publish via an API management solution. And um, it was frustrating because a lot of times the APIs themselves were reasonably good, reasonably usable and understandable, but the documentation was all over the place. I mean, I got emails of PDF, I got nice, really pretty HTML generated, but totally unstandard API documents, and um, a lot of other things, let's just say. And even those that were somehow resembling OpenAPI spec stuff, they were usually not validated properly. So there was like stuff that couldn't be published because there were errors, and in general, people didn't know how to deal with them. So they were just doing the bare minimum, and then ended up writing a lot of kind of stuff manually around the documentation, or there just wasn't any. There was just, this is an endpoint and it has a couple of attributes and that's it. And so I kind of, I want to make it known that this OpenAPI specification is existing. I used to love RAML. I still love RAML, but like that was before before the standard OpenAPI. But that was the whole point, that it was so easy to say to people that this is the style guide, this is how we do APIs, and then you would provide them with tooling and say that, hey, validate your stuff, and this is how you will publish it automatically when you have this spec class. And everything was so simple, and that was kind of the API ops concept that is very near and dear to me. So yeah,
So
basically from frustration, I love Spec.
so do you think people are equipped to deal with this in their jobs? And I say equipped from both a tooling but also education and learning. Do you feel like you have to provide a certain amount of education and training, or is there enough resources that people can find it on their own?
Well, it's kind of like, my background is actually in education. I studied education, and what they taught us at the university was that people only learn if they have the motivation and the understanding of what they don't know and what they need to learn. And here I see the problem that if you don't even know that OpenAPI exists, or kind of a specification format exists, and if you don't know what a good API looks like done with that spec, so you don't have a clue what you're missing. It's kind of like, you're just happy being ignorant.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. So when people kind of understand that, get that first aha moment, then they are totally capable of looking for that, all of that wonderful information which is all around in the internet. But if they don't know what they are missing, then they don't know how to look for it.
What's the best opportunity, would you say, for kind of cracking open that first awareness? Do you think it's good service providers that make it clear, hey, we're using OpenAPI for this, tools that make their world better, or is it like a book? What's the best way to kind of wake people up, would you say?
Well, I would say that it really depends on who you need to wake up. But let's just say that if it's developers or kind of hands-on architects, definitely tooling. Because if their favorite tooling, be it Postman or something else, if they find that tooling guiding them into certain direction and making it really easy for them, and kind of the vendor is promoting that, hey, this is how you're supposed to do stuff, they believe it. Like, people believe in Postman, or people believe in SwaggerHub, and they will kind of do how they are guided to do. But if I've also met tooling vendors or API management vendors who have basically argued with me that, hey, OpenAPI 2.0 it's just fine. Why should we move into 3.0? Nobody's asking for it. It's like, well, they are not asking for it because they don't know what they're missing with 3.0. And so it's like nobody asked API management kind of a few years back, and you still are selling it now. So how is that going?
Yeah.
I think that's the first kind of thing that they tell you when you study product management or marketing, that you don't believe exactly what the customers are telling you about their needs, but you kind of go somewhere there. But also, I think that one of the problems has been that the standard, for example, the 3.0 has been kind of developing gradually. So there were not all the features first which were in 2.0, and so people couldn't transfer to 3.0, or their tooling didn't support it, or the tooling supported 6-month-old version of it.
Yeah.
And that created a lot of issues.
Yeah, I think we're still recovering from kind of that, and even though I would say the spec has momentum, I think right now the tooling is still catching up, and then the scope at which they support the spec, how much of the spec they support. And then, I mean, I would say from an API management, there's a certain amount of leadership that we need to step up and do when it comes to educating and letting developers know, if we made something work with a tool or that was really slick and made things work well, made my life easier, we should show how we used OpenAPI behind that. There's a certain amount of pulling back the curtain and educating what's going on behind the scenes.
And I think that, for example, in the early days of RAML, if MuleSoft hadn't built the RAML editor and the support and very heavily kind of pushed for that way of describing APIs and designing APIs, no one would have started using it. I mean, I still know, of course, not everybody started using it, but for example, we were starting to renew our APIs at the organization I was working then at the time when RAML was the only standard, standard, and that was the kind of RAML related tooling was the only one that kind of was promoted and usable together. And if you wanted to do kind of design first and really kind of validate and do generated documentation from the spec, that was the only real option. And it did help that they were kind of promoting it, because otherwise it would have just been some obscure standard somewhere and nobody would have cared.
Well, and it feels like you touching on a different class of tooling, almost like core tooling, and Swagger. This is one of the reasons Swagger was so popular, is because of the docs, the Swagger UI, and Swagger editor were two reasons. And I know Fran from AsyncAPI believes pretty heavily in the core tooling for AsyncAPI, which is docs, converter, generator. And I feel like that's something that the OAI maybe is missing an opportunity on, is owning that core tooling.
That is possible, but I see a lot of people when they first adopt the idea of OpenAPI. They do go to Swagger Hub, but that's their first kind of choice because they possibly don't know about anything else, or they're just learning it and they're trying something that is readily available. And of course, it's not in all ways perfect, but it's there. And then it's also integrated in some of the API management tools. So kind of that is one aspect. But for example, I've used Swagger Hub and some other tools. There's this project Mermaid. Now I don't remember who was the guy who was.
That's Mike Ralphson.
Yeah, exactly. So that was actually one of the coolest tools with Swagger Hub to use in training, because it really kind of makes it clear to people how things work without not necessarily like there are different kinds of people. There are those developers who kind of don't mind writing stuff, but then there are those product manager or other types of people who kind of want to click on stuff, and you kind of need to figure out both. But at least those tools have the good side that they are really like they are available and they are pretty easy to understand, and you can do stuff with them even if they might not be like perfect solutions. And so then you learn because you are using it and you are hands-on trying it instead of reading something and trying to figure out how the hell does this work.
Yeah.
Because for most people it is about learning by doing and not learning by trying to figure out what the author is meaning theoretically.
Learning incrementally, learning as they have time. I don't think everyone has the opportunity to just stop what they're doing and read a book end to end on I don't know, OpenAPI. There are books out there, but and so I think there's an opportunity for tooling manufacturers to lead, I think, and step up, but also educate people. And I know, so we have a previous conversation of this, that we do the API specifications kind of public office hours, and we were talking about answering questions. And I really feel like there's a huge opportunity for tooling providers to embed some of these questions and answers in their tools and allow for people to educate themselves in line. Like, hey, what did you just do? You added a parameter. What's a parameter? What else? What other properties? So maybe autocomplete's to start there, but I think, what are some other ways do you think tools can help onboard people and make it easier for them to learn what's going on?
Well, kind of first point is that FAQs and in general questions are quite good way of learning, because then the person is able to kind of exactly say, okay, this is the stuff that I don't know. But then of course they are not very good at kind of guiding you through a process or seeing that if you are doing something wrong. Because if we think about the typical IDE, or like, for example, what was so good originally with the RAML editor in any point, and also what is good with Swagger Hub, is that they give you immediate feedback if you are doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And this actually, like, if you think about how people learn coding nowadays, or like in the recent years, a lot of people go through this kind of online courses or tools where you produce code, or like you have some example and then you write your stuff there and then it tells you if it went almost well or something. So that's the same sensation. You get instant feedback and then you kind of know where to possibly go further, and you're guided. Kind of it's contextual onboarding, so you're guided through the next stage, and those have a lot of good sides to them, although when it comes to adults, it's not sometimes something that adults want to have on them, that they are kind of very strictly guided through a specific process. But in these kind of situations, when you have this kind of IDE approach, or like the kind of validate while you're coding, that's something that is kind of guiding it, but it's not really like telling you that this is exactly the direction that you should be going at this moment.
Well, and it's relevant and contextual to your work, hopefully, because you're using a tool trying to accomplish something in your job that matters to you. That moment, I think, there's a huge opportunity for tooling and services that make my life easier, but then also education to help me progress in what I know and maybe learn more about if I'm applying a schema. How can I learn more about JSON schema in this moment? I think there's a huge chance there.
And for example, if you think about kind of Postman and the testing in like the test cases writing in Postman, I think that I've used that sneakily with some on-the-job training, because sometimes like if you have a test suite and it kind of checks those stupid common things about the design, and then you give it to your kind of a bit newbie test team that maybe hasn't worked maybe so much with APIs or so much with kind of specifically designed APIs or something, and you give them that and you say that, hey, try to make this pass, and then they kind of get to that, and then they start running, like first they run it manually and then they start kind of doing the Newman stuff and whatever. So I've seen that approach kind of work, because they don't really think that they are being taught something. They think that they're coding. So, and I mean, they are, but they're also learning something.
No, I'm so glad we kind of started these conversations with you, because I did not know you were an educator was your background, and I feel like education is, I remember Sam Ramji from who ran Apogee for a long time. After they IPO'd and they left, he came to me and he's like, look, the service that you offer as API evangelist is super valuable to startups like us, because you're educating people. You're out on the front lines educating people. And we don't always have the budget to do that properly. And it's really difficult for us to get it prioritized with our VCs, our executive leadership, because they just don't really see the value. But he said it was critical to us. And so I really feel like this is something I want to explore with you more is, and I think we're doing it as part of our other conversations, the questions. But really, I would say education is the fundamental building block here, ingredient in all of this, whether it's services, whether it's tools, whether it's the spec, that it has to be, that education piece has to be layered in and part of it all.
Yeah, it needs to be there, and it needs to be something that is given in a way or catered in a way that people are kind of getting it when they need it and how they need it. Because like education is one thing, but kind of if you think about it in a way of teaching or in a way of preaching instead of like learning, it's a totally different thing. And for example, I remember back in olden days when I was just kind of starting out, or we were starting the second generation of APIs, and I remember reading your API Evangelist blog, and I was kind of, and some other stuff that you've written, and then I saw you in some conference, and I was like, oh my god, this Kinley, and I read the blog and everything, and the thing was that it worked. I mean, I learned, for example, reading your blog, because I was already in that kind of, I had already understood that, hey, there's something that I don't know, and then I started looking for it, and then I stumbled on your blog, and it was kind of quite well organized for like, kind of, if you were already in that mindset and in that kind of hands-on thinking about the stuff, you could get the point. If you were just kind of given that blog and you were not in that place yet, it wouldn't have been that effective, even if it was like the perfect blog in the world.
You just so described the last 10 years, because why I'm at Postman. I'm still writing on API Evangelist, but I feel like I had grown as much as I could grow in that area, and not that my growth is dependent on my audience size, but my audience size was pretty substantial, but it wasn't growing, and I couldn't break into new people. I was just preaching to the echo chamber, and that's why I wanted a tool, a service that I could then get in front of people who were just trying to solve problems and really weren't in the mindset that you just described. And
exactly.
So that's
because your blog was growing with you, and it was kind of like, it was on the level that when you were starting to be really kind of into stuff and you were in those complex problems and you got it. But if you were like like a lot of people were still in the mindset of API is just kind of a piece of software. And if I can code something, I can code an API. There's nothing kind of specific to it. And it's just coding in the first place. And that was also why in 2018 we got frustrated in Finland. That's kind of I would start a band called Frustrated in Finland or something. But we were really getting frustrated because we were trying to kind of get Finland as a nation to get on board of like digitalization and kind of ecosystems and there were a lot of public and private kind of initiatives that kind of required APIs. There were even laws on traffic that kind of required everybody to do APIs, but there was no understanding of the kind of business side or API economy side or productization side of it. And it was useless kind of telling everybody that, because if you don't believe it, you don't believe it. If the world is flat, the world is flat. And then we kind of figured out that this needs some heavy lifting, and we wrote the API Economy 101 book, and also I was doing this API cycles method, and both were kind of targeted intentionally for the level of I have no idea about either kind of APIs or at least the business side of APIs, and the kind of way that you could think of developing APIs as a product, because it doesn't help if everybody keeps selling that in conferences and stuff, unless you actually know what product management is, if you can fathom why API would be a product and what does that actually mean, and a lot of other things. Not to mention style guides, not to mention kind of other best practices or anything else. So it really needed those kind of Lego block or ABC book type of stuff. And that wasn't anywhere, because most of the people talking about APIs were already in that kind of high level. And the other guys were just not on any level.
Would you say that the OpenAPI is suffering from the same condition right now, that it needs to break out of the core?
I think it's possible, because there are definitely, like now that I've been in the OAI and in the CSC meetings and like the conversation goes deep and wide, and I can kind of follow it, most of it, and I even may have some opinions on stuff, but it is kind of really deep, and there are still some areas like for example, using dynamic data in APIs or something, or in the OpenAPI. Like there are some specific areas. Or one guy brought in this kind of geology or like kind of GPS data and location data in APIs, and there are some niche areas that kind of require even more deeper understanding and everything and specific knowledge. But for a person who's starting out with APIs, or even has a few years of some knowledge of APIs or software development or something, and is a very trained architect, for example, they are getting lost. I just today had that kind of conversation, and it's not because, I mean, there's so many things. There is like, okay, am I doing this right kind of stuff from a spec point of view? But then there's the kind of, am I doing the right stuff? So it's kind of like, am I doing the API right, and what else is going around here? So a lot of people are just baffled about the data modeling, the security, the documentation, like the developer experience, and OpenAPI kind of takes all of that in. But if you are not aware of all those aspects, you can kind of feel that it's very, very comprehensive, but it's too much for you.
You almost need a teacher to come in and guide you and say, this is next, this is over here, and help you understand what's right around you, what you do right or wrong. Yeah, no, I want to explore this again with you sometime. I think the education piece is a really critical one. So, but thank you for this talk. This is our first one. I don't know
Yeah.
where we're going with this. I think next week I'm going to try to get Fran from Async, and we're going to try to find different folks. I would love to keep thinking about the format, like how do we do this? This is just one-on-one
Yeah.
between you and I, but let's keep talking and see how we can include
Yeah, I
other
think-
voices and kind of widen the conversation.
Exactly. And I'm really looking forward for that Fran and you discussion on the async. I think
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I like talking with him. He's a good guy. So,
Yeah.
well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank
This is
you.
awesome. I appreciate you being the first one, and let's keep talking.
Yeah.
All
Thanks.
right.
Bye.
Bye bye.